1. This is a long time ago, when I worked in a software call center. I had recently had a baby and was working part-time from home. Work from home was a very new concept. I was one of the first to trial this, and there were plenty of people in management who did not approve of it, and assumed I was slacking off, and to be fair, I was not working standard hours as I negotiated a late shift to support clients on the other side of the country, working until 8 p.m. so my husband could look after the baby. My boss loved this, as otherwise he would have to pay overtime for out-of-hours calls. We had to record time on each client so they could be billed. They had a separate reporting system. I had to manually enter the client, incident number, time spent, and run the report. Then press submit at the end of the week. This report was the responsibility of another manager who insisted that I had to submit the report by 5 p.m. on Friday, so he could review the numbers Monday first thing. He would email me every Friday at 5 p.m. to say that it was late again. I would explain over and over that I work until 8 p.m., and I would be submitting it that night. He just would not understand. Whatever, I did not report to him, so I started to ignore him, which in retrospect was a mistake. So one week I received an email. This had been copied to every single layer of management above me, complaining bitterly about people who submit their report late every single week. It was obviously targeting me. I felt very isolated in work from home and felt like he was turning everyone in the office against me. Work from home can be isolating, as we all know. I went into the reporting tool and searched around and found an option to check for late submissions. Pressed it and entered my name. It came up with one late entry. Turns out the submission deadline was Sunday evening, and my submissions were all on time. I pressed reply on the email and attached a print screen of the report. Before pressing send, I checked more closely on the one late submission, which was entered first thing Monday morning. I searched my emails and found an email to this guy. You see, I had taken a 1-week vacation a couple of months prior, and you could not enter your time in advance. So I had emailed him and asked him to enter it in my absence, and that was my one late submission. I attached a print screen of that as well. I rewrote my response many times, ranging from snippy, thanks for wasting my time, to hurt. I don't know why I'm being targeted like this. But in the end, I deleted all additions and just sent the print screens. I did add my immediate boss, who had been mysteriously left off the original email. I never received any response to that email, but my boss called me howling with laughter. Everyone was talking about it. Suck it, Trevor. 2. Just a couple of years ago, my fiancé, a 31-year-old man, and this dumb jackass worked at the same small-town grocery store. Both worked in the meat department. DJ has a nasty habit of taking various meat products that have reached their sell-by date, rewrapping them, slapping on a new label, and setting it back out on the shelves. He does this repeatedly to the point where the meat will be out so long that it'll become rancid. He was repeatedly warned by management about his shenaniganery, and how that wasn't okay. He essentially just shrugged it off and continued being a public health hazard. My fiancé saw this, and would do what he could to clear all the old putrid meat out and put in fresh products. DJ did not like this one bit. DJ is an older man who subscribes to the mentality of age automatically equaling wisdom, even though he's proof of the exact opposite, and takes great pleasure in throwing his weight around and bullying his younger co-workers. So naturally, my fiancé became a prime target. It got to the point where my fiancé was on the sales floor, replacing DJ's rancid products with fresh ones, and DJ himself came out. They got into an argument which escalated to DJ grabbing my fiancé by the shirt, pulling him close and aggressively shouting in his face. The only thing that kept that from turning into an all-out fight was the witnesses on the sales floor, plus the fact that they were in plain view of a security camera. Fast forward a few months, and Company X fell under the ownership of a larger store chain and changed names to Company Y. Well, with larger corporations come stricter rules, and DJ was at last given the boot. So he left and now works at a completely separate store chain, Company Z. Fast forward to this week, my fiancé and his awesome coworker get to talking. Awesome coworker mentions how he heard through the grapevine that DJ is still continuing on with his shenaniganery at Company Z, so fiancé and I decided to take a short road trip today to that particular branch of Company Z where DJ now works. If DJ was there, he must have been in the back because we didn't see him. We went to the meat section, and what we found was pretty much what we expected. Black ground beef, grey pork, grey sausages, the works. There was even a package of pork chops that had a sell-by date that was 4 days ago, and was still sitting on the shelves. Fiancé took some pictures on his phone, and then we casually walked out the front door and back to our car. Once we got back home, Fiancé called and made an anonymous report to the Department of Agriculture. That store can probably expect a visit from an inspector soon. That's as far as things have gone for now. Fiancé's aunt voiced discontent with us over messing with DJ's job. However, DJ is literally putting the health and safety of the general public at risk. So we feel no remorse whatsoever. So, he can go pound sand as far as I'm concerned. 3. So let me preface with, I was 22, stupid, and a bit of an immature asshole. I'm in no way the victim of this tale, but I do think it's a funny enough story worth sharing of the battle of two shitty roommates. I had just moved in with my boyfriend, as one of his roommates was moving out. When I met his second roommate, Split P, I knew I was in trouble, because his way of introducing himself was lecturing me on teas, when he found out I was a tea enthusiast. Still, there's no rules against being a mansplaining douche, so I stayed positive and indulged his tea lectures. But then it started getting worse, quickly. Split P worked as a sound tech at a goth club. He was constantly bringing women home from the club, then taking ecstasy and having crazy sex in his room, not subtly. Again, we all get our bang on, I ignored it. But then he started using my cat as a method of impressing women. My cat was on a strict diet of a specific type of food. I'm a cat nerd, and I knew that keeping her on a regularly scheduled diet would prevent her from learning to beg for food and would prevent obesity. Well, Split P, who has no animal experience, started pointing out to his women guests that my cat's bowl was always empty. I had suspected he had been feeding her more behind my back because she'd gotten overweight and started begging. But I finally overheard it happening when he said to his guest, "Yeah, they constantly neglect this cat. I always have to feed her." I walked in and said, "Hey, I overheard you, and I know you've felt this way a long time without ever speaking to me. But I actually don't appreciate you messing up my cat's food schedule by feeding her more than she needs." Even though he just filled her bowl, he looked at me with the most gaslighty eyes and said, "Oh no, I've never fed her." The woman he was with became uncomfortable, probably because of how blatantly and embarrassingly he lied, and left. This is all just to give you a feel about what kind of a cowardly diaper he was. But I didn't even get mad yet, until he started bringing women from the club at 3 a.m. when he got off work to our apartment, having sex with them and then telling them to leave without walking them out. We lived in a dump of an apartment, as it was all we could afford. This means our front door would only shut if it was locked. So asking someone to see themselves out just meant that our door would hang wide open in a really rough neighborhood. And we had a cat he supposedly cared about. I kept asking him to walk these women out so he could lock the door. I begged him. I reminded him my cat that he loves so much could run away. He didn't care. It got so bad, my cat actually learned to alert us when the door was left open. Literally, she'd come wake me up at 4 a.m., then lead me down the stairs and show me the open door. Are you kidding me? This is when I knew I hated him more than anything I could presently think of, and needed to start preparing to make his life unpleasant. It started off pretty simple. He was about to go on vacation for a week. We reminded him daily for 4 days before he left to please wash his dishes, as we don't want to wash dishes for him anymore. I even went to see him the night before while he was packing and told him it was just another friendly reminder to get that done. Guess who didn't do their dishes? So I picked up all of his dirty dishes and I left them on his bed. I told my boyfriend that if he gets upset, we can just tell him the dishes were in the way and we put them where he could find them. My boyfriend's a peacekeeper, so instead he picked up all the dishes and washed them. When he came back, we told him he needed to leave. We couldn't deal with him anymore, and the dishes were the final straw. For 3 months he claimed he couldn't find another apartment. By this point I was done. I couldn't deal with this dynamic that resulted in our roommate treating us like doormats. I decided it was time to get crazy. So I sat on the kitchen floor, and as soon as I heard him come in, I just started crying, wailing. Split Pea came in, alarmed, and asked what was wrong. I started scream-crying at him that my boyfriend would never marry me if I couldn't get rid of our roommate, that it was time for me and my boyfriend to start picturing our forever here together, and Split Pea was ruining it. For 3 days, I just walked around the apartment scream-crying and wailing about how this would be the nursery, but our roommate won't leave and let us share our love. He would bring women over, and I would ruin their night. I would wait up until 3:30 a.m. when they would get home, offer his guest a bowl, tell them about all the other guests he has at this time of night, and then start crying and talking about how I just wish he would move out. I guess 3 nights of women leaving because of me was enough, because he suddenly found a great apartment and would be moving out ASAP. 4. I used to work in a trade shop run by a great boss. Everyone got along great, except for one of the department heads, B. For reasons unrelated to this story, the boss decided to sell the shop to B, and in the wake, the majority of the staff quits within months, leaving us understaffed. I, naively, decided to stick it out, and assumed that B would hire people to fill the empty positions. They don't. We go from a 15-person trade shop down a 5-person within a year, and that includes the 6 people who turned over. One of the many issues that developed, and there were many, was B's inability to schedule, or think through actions to the end, and plan ahead. While I worked there, the 2 years with the boss, I often came in 10 to 15 minutes early due to the nature of my commute. I'd come in, unload my stuff, make some coffee, small talk with my coworkers, shoot the shit with my boss, but we never really started work until everyone's scheduled start time. When B took over, the moment you stepped into the shop, he immediately started to bark orders at you regardless if you were in the building 15 to 20 minutes early. Mostly it's because B was in a rush to get something done they just remembered. When I, the now most senior person, left at the shop from the old regime, would point out we technically weren't on the clock for another 15 or 20 minutes, and I want to make coffee, B would just snap at you, telling you to do it now because so-and-so is coming right at opening. So I started to wait in my car, bring in my coffee from home, and would only walk in the door as the last minute was changing. I was technically never late to work, and was ready to work the moment I stepped through the door. I don't know if B caught on, but the rest of my staff did and followed suit, since I told them to. For the remaining months I lasted there, all my co-workers would still often show up early to work, but all wait in the vehicles. At some point one of them had a minivan, and we'd all party in there, and go in as a group. Anytime a new person joined because someone walked off, we also would warn them of what would happen. It's been several years since I worked there. I do not know any of the current staff besides B. I happened to be doing an on-site install nearby at the time that shop would open, and looked over into the parking lot in front of the shop. Like clockwork, a minute before the shop was scheduled to open, about 6 people got out of their vehicles and headed in. I may not work there, but it's nice to see my resistance still exists. For those wondering why I just didn't clock in early and get overtime, it's simply because I didn't want to. I deliberately arrive at work early so that I can get into the correct headspace to deal with B, and I want to hang out with the staff for a few minutes before we have to deal with the daily shit show. At that point, I had just put an end to the 11 or 12-hour workdays I was putting in to deal with cleaning up B's mess. I was willing to help out since I felt bad that half the staff left, and they just needed the help. I also like money. But after 6+ months of the same mistakes happening with no effort on B's part to even acknowledge there are issues, I burned out. So I informed B that I was only working 8-hour days. I will not come in early or stay late. I only lasted another few months before I found another shop. I'm a vindictive person, and at this point I was enjoying watching the world burn around me. 5. The beginning. In my house, I have a very weird collection. A collection of shoehorns. You know what these are, right? Shoe stores have them, some people got them at home. They're those things that help you slip into your shoes easier, especially if they're very tight. Where I live, here in Germany, pretty much everyone has one of those, so yeah. I've got quite a huge collection of these, but that's nothing too weird, right? Well, let me tell you. For about 8 years, I've been working as a delivery guy for a huge pizza franchise, the name of which I'll leave out due to my own privacy. Also, we don't want to risk me losing my job, in case people here like it so much that it makes the rounds. The majority of customers are either neutral or friendly, but you have some customers here and there who are just very unfriendly. Typical Karens, or even worse. It didn't matter how friendly I was, how much I hurried, or how hot the food still was. Some people tend to see you as a piece of trash, and push the responsibilities for any kind of mistakes they made in their order on you as the guy who delivered it. As a pizza delivery guy, they expect you to be someone who hasn't finished school, took a wrong turn, and that's the best I could do. And they will make sure you feel that. Even with these kind of people, I always treat them with respect, smile, and make sure they get the best possible customer service that I, as a delivery guy, can offer them. I've been insulted, screamed at, spat on, and had people throw things at me that the kitchen personnel of our store messed up. And I was still as friendly as could be. We also deliver anywhere, as long as you leave a comment on your order and explain where you are, and it is within the radius of our delivery area. So I once drove a pizza out to the boonies, and someone robbed me of my money. The culprit was never found. I still didn't quit, and still was always friendly. I even had a customer get so angry that they kicked me down the stairs because they ordered 5 minutes before our store closed, and my boss had asked me to nicely ask them if they could be so kind as to order a few minutes earlier, so we had more time to prepare their food, and still make it out on time and go home after a long day of work. This incident was about 5 years ago, and it was the first time that I lost my friendliness. I didn't take any damage because I was able to catch my fall by myself, and since I was already on overtime, I just wanted to get back so I could go home. I also didn't want to get the police involved because that would have just taken more time, and I would have had to prove somehow that I had been kicked down the stairs for them to get any punishment. But something inside me was longing for some kind of revenge, something that wouldn't get me into a ton of trouble, but would also give me a good feeling even if the customer would never notice. I stood there for a moment. The customer was back in his apartment. The door was closed. I could hear him still inside, angrily telling his partner how rude I was, and how dare I tell him that. As his voice got quieter with every step, he walked away from that door. After a few seconds, I walked back up the stairs, and there it was, a shoehorn. In Germany, the hallway that connect multiple apartments often have closets there for people to store their shoes in, especially in small towns. That's very normal. On these closets, they often had shoehorns. The customer's shoehorn had a lot of marks from using it, so I knew they were using it a lot. I snatched it as fast as I could and put it into the bag that I used to carry the pizza to the customer before. So while walking down the stairs, no one could see me walking with it in my hand. I walked fast-paced to my car, got in, and drove back to the store. It felt good. A little bit of adrenaline rushing through my body as I stole something that seemed almost so useless but also so useful at the same time. For me, this was the breaking point. From now on, whenever someone treated me wrong, got me and insulted me, or tried worse, I would just wait until they closed their door with a smile on my face. Then, as they closed the door, I walked away at first, then slowly snuck back to the door, stealing their shoehorns. I want to mention that not tipping me is not considered an unfriendly behavior. It's very normal in Germany to not get tips, even though we work on minimum wage. Some of our customers ordered again after I stole their shoehorn, and they were just unfriendly again. By that time, they usually had their old shoehorn that I stole already replaced with a new one. I can tell you the thrill you get when you steal a shoehorn from the same person a second time. Oh, it's something very special, and every time I stole someone's shoehorn, it always filled me with a satisfying feeling of well-deserved revenge. Right now, I'm storing about 40 different shoehorns. I got them in all shapes and materials. I've got short ones, medium ones, long ones, some made of wood, some plastic, some metal. I even have some for seasonal and festive opportunities like Christmas, fall, spring, different engravings. One even has the name of the family I stole it from on it. Now, whenever a friend moves in together with a partner, or they move into a new apartment or even a house, whenever someone has a birthday that I know, and on Christmas, I give these away as a funny gift. My friends don't know where I got them from. They all just accept this is a funny way of my gifting them something, usually accompanied by an actual gift. Even my wife doesn't know where these shoehorns come from. She just thinks I know a store that sells them, I guess. I keep them hidden in my garage above the door in a small shelf. There would never be a reason for her to look up there. I've been doing it for 5 years and have never been caught. Even when I deliver to the person I stole 2 horns from again, they would not show any reaction that they noticed it was me. I think they tend to blame their neighbors. So, this is how I get my revenge on people who don't seem to acknowledge the hard work of us small delivery men and women. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 316. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. That encourages YouTube to recommend the videos to other people, because that's helpful for the channel if you can do that. Okay, if you'd like to get early access to the content, then you can support me through my Patreon, which is linked in the description. You can do that for as little as $1 or more if you'd like a month. You'll also find, linked in the description, a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store, which is currently hosted on Teespring. And you can make donations during streams or videos like this one by hitting that little $sign in the middle of the heart just below the video. You don't have to do this, but I do appreciate it, and it really has been helping me out. And before I go on, I have a little shout out to give for the author of story number 3, that's Reddit user Itchy Spider Butthole. I don't think that's a real name. But they have a podcast called A Couple of Nerds. I'm linking to the website in the description, but I believe you can find it on Apple and other podcaster places as well. If you'd like to go over, take a look at the kind of content those folks are putting out. You might find something you enjoy. Okay, with that, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: have you ever noticed that someone's probably done something illegal but it's benefited you, so you've been conflicted about how you feel about it? I got a delivery of, my monthly delivery of water today, right? I like the bottled like spring water. And it was late going out. I guess they had trouble finding a driver available to pick it up, but they found one eventually. And from the time the driver picked it up to when it was delivered was like 30 minutes, and it's usually a lot more than that from where it comes from. So I think the driver may have been speeding. So on the one hand, very dangerous, you could hurt yourself and many others. But on the other hand, I got my delivery exactly when I should have, when I was expecting it to be otherwise late, and ordinarily it should have been late. So I'm conflicted, and I don't know how to feel. I'm kind of leaning more towards I wouldn't have minded it being a touch late had it meant abiding by the speed limits. Well, let me know what you think in a comment below if you're willing to share. Okay, with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.